My sister called at 2 a.m. Mom's packing your things while you sleep. She's taking you somewhere you can't come back from. Leave now. Caitlin's name lit up my phone at 2:17 a.m., and I knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. My older sister lived 3 states away and never called past 10 p.m. I answered and heard her breathing hard, panicked. Daniel, listen to me very carefully. Mom is in your room right now packing your things. I'm watching through the baby monitor camera I hid there last month. She's got a suitcase, and she's taking your passport, your birth certificate, everything. Dad's loading the car. They're planning to take you somewhere tonight, and you won't be coming back. You need to get out of that house right now. I was 17, and her words made no sense. I'd gone to bed 3 hours ago after a normal evening. Dinner with my parents, homework, television. Mom had kissed my forehead goodnight. Dad had reminded me about church in the morning. Nothing had been wrong. What are you talking about? I whispered, sitting up in bed. My door was closed, but I could hear movement in the hallway. Footsteps. The quiet sound of someone trying not to make noise. Caitlin's voice got more urgent. I've been monitoring them for weeks. They've been planning this since you told them you wanted to go to college instead of the missionary program. Daniel, they're taking you to that compound in Montana, the one run by Pastor Raymond. You know what happens to kids who go there. They don't come out the same, some don't come out at all. My blood went cold. Pastor Raymond's Wilderness Reformation Camp was legendary in our church community. Troubled teens sent there for months of isolation and religious conditioning. Kids who questioned the church, who showed signs of worldly thinking, who needed to be broken down and rebuilt. Several families in our congregation had sent children there. Those kids came back hollow, obedient, and wrong. I threw off my blankets and grabbed jeans from my floor. Caitlin was still talking fast. I set up cameras because I knew something was off. The way they've been watching you, the private meetings with Pastor Raymond, the way Mom cries when she thinks no one's looking. They think they're saving your soul. But Daniel, that place is not a camp. It's a prison. Kids have died there. The church covers it up. I have evidence. I've been gathering it for months. But right now you need to move. Go through your window. Your car keys are in your jacket pocket downstairs, but you can't risk going down there. Run to the gas station on Maple Street. I'm already on my way. I'll be there in 6 hours. I pulled on my jeans and a shirt, hands shaking so badly I could barely function. This couldn't be real. My parents loved me. They were strict about church and faith, but they wouldn't send me to some prison camp. I crept to my bedroom door and pressed my ear against it. Voices in the hallway. Mom's voice, quiet and determined. We're doing this because we love him. Before he gets any worse. Before college corrupts him completely. Dad's deeper voice responding. Raymond said the first 72 hours are critical. No contact with the outside world. Complete isolation until he accepts why he's there. My stomach dropped. They were really doing this. My own parents were planning to kidnap me in the middle of the night and take me to some religious prison. I backed away from the door and looked at my second-floor window. The drop was maybe 15 feet to the lawn below. Survivable, but I'd probably sprain something. I grabbed my phone, my wallet from my desk, and the emergency cash I kept hidden in a book. $300. Not much, but better than nothing. I opened my window as quietly as possible. The night air was cold against my face. I could hear them in the hallway still talking, making plans. Mom saying we'd be on the road before dawn, that I'd sleep through most of the drive, that the sedative the doctor had prescribed would keep me calm. Sedative. They were planning to drug me. My own mother had gotten a prescription to knock me out so they could transport me. The betrayal cut deeper than I could process. I climbed out the window and hung from the ledge, then dropped. I hit the grass hard and my ankle twisted under me. Pain shot up my leg, but I forced myself to move. I limped across the backyard toward the fence, keeping low. The kitchen light was on. I could see Dad through the window loading a cooler into a large black SUV I'd never seen before. Not our family car. A rental maybe. Something without GPS that I might track. I climbed the fence and dropped into the neighbor's yard, then ran through 3 more backyards before hitting the street. My ankle screamed with each step, but adrenaline kept me moving. The gas station was half a mile away. I ran the whole distance, expecting to hear my parents' car behind me at any moment. The gas station was fluorescent bright and nearly empty at 2:30 a.m. Just one clerk behind bulletproof glass and a trucker filling his tank. I went inside and bought a coffee I didn't want, just to have a reason to stay. The clerk barely looked at me. I sat at one of the plastic tables and called Caitlin back. "I'm here. I made it out." She exhaled in relief. "Thank God. Stay there. Stay visible. Don't let them isolate you. If they show up, make a scene, scream, get witnesses. They can't take you by force in public." I asked her how she knew all this, how she'd been monitoring them. Caitlin's voice got tight. "Because they did the same thing to me 5 years ago. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to live in fear. But when I was 18 and told them I wanted to study art instead of becoming a missionary's wife, they sent me to a women's Reformation retreat. 3 months in Idaho. No phone, no internet, no contact. They broke me down through sleep deprivation, forced confessions, isolation. I got out by pretending I'd been saved, by becoming what they wanted. Then I ran the day I turned 19 and they couldn't legally stop me. I've been planning how to save you ever since. The coffee burned my throat, but I couldn't taste it. My sister had survived the same nightmare they'd planned for me. She'd been protecting me for years without me knowing. The door chimed and my parents walked in. Mom saw me immediately, and her face crumpled with relief and rage. "Daniel, thank God. We woke up and you were gone. We've been so worried." She rushed toward me, but I stood up fast, knocking my chair back. "Stay away from me. I know what you were planning. I know about Montana and Pastor Raymond and the sedative." The clerk looked up from his phone, suddenly interested. The trucker had finished pumping and was walking toward the entrance. Dad stepped forward with his hands out in a calming gesture. "Son, you're confused. Let's go home and talk about this." I backed toward the counter. "I'm not going anywhere with you. You were going to drug me and take me to that compound. Caitlin told me everything. She told me what you did to her." Mom's expression changed from concern to something harder. "Your sister has filled your head with lies. She's been bitter since she chose to leave the church. We're trying to save you from making her mistakes." I pulled out my phone. "I'll call the police right now. Tell them you're trying to kidnap me." Dad's voice got cold. "You're a minor. We're your legal guardians. We have every right to make decisions about your welfare. The police won't stop us from taking you to a church program." He was right, and we all knew it. Parents had broad authority over minor children. Religious programs weren't illegal. They could force me into that car, and there was nothing law enforcement would do about it. Mom stepped closer. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be. We love you. This is for your own good. You've been influenced by secular thinking. College will destroy your faith. We're giving you a chance to find your way back to God before it's too late." The trucker cleared his throat. He was a big man, maybe 50, with a graying beard. "Excuse me, but this boy seems pretty clear that he doesn't want to go with you folks." Dad turned to him with a pleasant smile. "This is a family matter. Our son is troubled and we're getting him help." The trucker looked at me. "That true, kid? You troubled?" I shook my head. "They want to send me to a place where kids have died, a religious prison camp. I'm trying to escape." Mom made a dismissive sound. "He's being dramatic. It's a reformation program, perfectly safe, accredited by our church." The trucker pulled out his phone. "Which church would that be?" Dad's pleasant expression slipped. "That's none of your concern." The trucker started typing. "Let's see what the internet says about this Pastor Raymond place in Montana." He scrolled for a moment, then his face hardened. "Says here there's been multiple investigations, abuse allegations. One kid died of dehydration in 2019. Another disappeared in 2021. Still haven't found him." Mom's face went pale. "Those are lies spread by enemies of the faith. Satan attacks anything that brings people to Christ." The trucker looked at her with something between pity and disgust. "Ma'am, I got 3 kids. If any of them told me they didn't want to go somewhere, I'd listen. Sounds like your boy here is old enough to know his own mind." Dad stepped between the trucker and me. "This conversation is over. Daniel, get in the car now." I moved behind the counter. The clerk had unlocked a door leading to a back office. He jerked his head toward it. "Kid can wait back here if he wants. You folks need to leave, or I'm calling the cops for harassment." Dad pulled out his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer. This is parental interference." The trucker crossed his arms. "Call whoever you want. I'm staying right here making sure this boy doesn't get taken anywhere against his will." The standoff lasted 20 minutes. My parents on one side of the store, me in the back office with the clerk, the trucker standing guard. Dad made several calls. I heard him talking to someone about legal rights and parental authority. Mom was crying, saying I'd been brainwashed by my sister, that I didn't understand they were trying to save me. Finally, Dad hung up and approached the office door. "Daniel, our attorney says we have every legal right to transport you to this program, but we won't force you tonight. Come home. We'll discuss this as a family in the morning." I stayed behind the counter. "I'm not coming home. I'm 18 in 6 months. I'll wait it out." Mom's voice broke. "Where will you go? How will you survive? You have no money, no job, no place to stay. You need us." Caitlin had said she'd be here in 6 hours. I just had to last until then. The clerk spoke up. "His sister's coming for him. He can wait here till she arrives. We're open 24 hours. Dad's face went red. "You're interfering with a family matter. I could sue you for this." The clerk shrugged. "Sue away. Not letting you drag a scared kid out of my store." My parents stood there for another few minutes. Then Dad grabbed Mom's arm and pulled her toward the door. "This isn't over, Daniel. You're making a mistake that will cost you everything. When you come crawling back, begging for forgiveness, remember that we tried to save you." They left, and I watched through the window as they got in the black SUV and drove away. The trucker stayed another hour, making sure they didn't come back. He bought me food from the hot case and told me stories about his own kids, how he'd never forced them into something that scared them. When he finally left to continue his route, he gave me $50 and his phone number. "You need help, you call me. Name's Frank Delgado. I mean it." Caitlin arrived at 8:30 a.m., driving a rental car. She was 23 and looked exhausted, her blonde hair pulled back, dark circles under her eyes from the drive. She ran into the gas station and hugged me hard enough to hurt. "You're okay. You actually got out." I'd been awake for over 30 hours and the crash was hitting hard. Caitlin loaded me into the car and we drove. She had a plan, she said. An apartment in her city, a job lined up for me, homeschool curriculum so I could finish my senior year independently. She'd been preparing for this for months, knowing it was only a matter of time before our parents tried with me what they'd done to her. We drove for 12 hours. stopping only for gas and food. Caitlin talked the whole time, explaining things I'd been too young to understand when she left. Our parents were deep in a fundamentalist church that controlled every aspect of members' lives. The church decided who married whom, what jobs people could have, where children went to school. The pastor had final say on all major life decisions. Questioning anything was seen as rebellion against God. Caitlin had started questioning at 16 when the pastor's son had assaulted her at a youth event, and the church had covered it up, saying she'd tempted him with immodest behavior. She'd been forced to publicly apologize while he faced no consequences. That was when she started planning her escape. The women's Reformation retreat had been brutal. They'd been woken every 2 hours for prayer sessions, forced to write confessions of their sins, denied food if they showed resistance. Some of the women there had been in the program for over a year, completely broken, unable to form coherent thoughts anymore. Caitlin had survived by faking compliance while secretly documenting everything. When she'd escaped and tried to report the abuse to authorities, the church's lawyers had threatened her with defamation suits. The program was technically legal, run on private property with parental consent. Without proof of physical abuse severe enough to prosecute, there was nothing law enforcement could do. The church was wealthy, politically connected, protected. Caitlin had spent the last 4 years gathering evidence, talking to other survivors, building a case. She'd been waiting for the right moment to expose them. My escape had accelerated her timeline. We arrived at her apartment in a city I'd never visited. Small but clean, a spare bedroom already set up for me. She'd been preparing this space for months. I collapsed on the bed and slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, Caitlin was at her computer surrounded by documents and files. She showed me what she'd collected. Testimonies from 24 survivors of various church reform programs, medical records showing injuries, death certificates, financial documents proving the church made millions from these programs while claiming nonprofit status. She'd also found something else. Video footage from inside one of the facilities, secretly recorded by a staff member who'd grown disgusted with what they were being asked to do. The videos showed kids being restrained, denied food and water, forced into stress positions for hours. One video showed a boy maybe 14 years old being locked in a small concrete room the staff called the prayer closet. He was in there for 3 days with no light, minimal food, a bucket for a toilet. When they finally let him out, he was non-responsive, traumatized beyond speech. Caitlin said he was still in a psychiatric facility 2 years later. I watched the footage and felt sick. That could have been me. Would have been me if Caitlin hadn't warned me in time. She said she was ready to release everything. The videos, the testimonies, the financial documents, but she needed my help. My story as a recent victim would validate the others, show that the abuse was ongoing, not historical. I agreed immediately. We contacted a journalist Caitlin had been working with, a woman named Veronica Tran, who specialized in investigating religious organizations. She'd been researching our church for over a year, but needed victims willing to go on record. Most survivors were too afraid of retaliation. The church had a history of destroying people who spoke out, using legal threats and social pressure to silence them. Veronica came to Caitlin's apartment 2 days later. She was mid-30s, sharp-eyed, carrying recording equipment and legal documents. She interviewed both of us for hours, recording every detail. The escape, the planned kidnapping, Caitlin's experiences 5 years ago, the pattern of abuse spanning decades. She said she had enough for a series of investigative articles that would run in a major newspaper. But she warned us the church would fight back hard. They'd claim we were lying, that we were bitter apostates trying to destroy their ministry. We needed to be prepared for attacks on our character, our credibility, our mental health. The articles published 3 weeks later. 5 parts, running over consecutive days, inside the church's hidden prison system. The response was immediate and explosive. The church issued a statement calling it all lies and persecution. Pastor Raymond held a press conference claiming the Reformation programs were misunderstood, that they helped troubled youth find faith and purpose. He said Caitlin and I were disturbed individuals spreading falsehoods, but other survivors started coming forward. Within days, dozens more people contacted Veronica with their own stories. The church couldn't dismiss all of them as liars. News stations picked up the story. Police in 3 states opened investigations. The IRS started looking into the church's finances. Parents who'd sent their children to the programs started demanding accountability. Some defended the church, claiming their kids had been helped. Others realized they'd been complicit in abuse. My parents called Caitlin's phone 40 times the day the first article published. She didn't answer. They left voicemails ranging from pleading to threatening. Mom crying about how we'd destroyed the family's reputation in the church. Dad saying we'd face legal consequences for defamation. Pastor Raymond personally calling to say we'd burn in hell for attacking God's work. Caitlin saved every message as evidence. The church's lawyers sent cease and desist letters threatening lawsuits. Veronica's newspaper had their own legal team ready. They'd vetted every claim, every piece of evidence. The church could sue, but they'd lose, and the discovery process would expose even more. 2 months after the articles published, criminal charges were filed against Pastor Raymond and 3 staff members at the Montana compound. Child abuse, false imprisonment, operating an unlicensed medical facility. The investigation had uncovered evidence of systematic abuse going back 15 years. More charges were pending in other states. The day the arrests were announced, my parents showed up at Caitlin's apartment. We saw them through the security camera she'd installed. Dad was holding a Bible. Mom looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 months. Caitlin didn't let them in, but she spoke to them through the intercom. "What do you want?" Mom's voice was broken. "To talk to Daniel. To explain. We never meant for any of this. We thought we were helping." Caitlin's voice stayed hard. "You were going to drug him and take him to a place where kids died. That's not help. That's abuse." Dad spoke up. "We've left the church. After everything came out, after we saw the evidence, we realized we'd been deceived. Pastor Raymond manipulated us. We see that now. Please, just let us talk to our son." I stood behind Caitlin, listening. Part of me wanted to believe they'd changed, that they'd genuinely seen the truth. But I remembered the sedative prescription, the packed bags, their willingness to hand me over to people who would break me. Caitlin looked at me, and I shook my head. I wasn't ready. Maybe never would be. She turned back to the intercom. "Daniel doesn't want to see you. You need to leave." Mom started crying. "We're his parents. We love him. We made mistakes, but we're trying to make it right." Caitlin's voice didn't soften. "You made a choice to value your church over your children. Both of us. You sent me to that place 5 years ago, and when I came back broken, you didn't ask questions. You were glad I'd been fixed. When Daniel started thinking for himself, you tried to do the same to him. That's not love. That's control. Now leave before I call the police." They left finally, and Caitlin turned to me. "You okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. Seeing them had opened wounds I'd been trying to ignore. Caitlin made tea, and we sat on her couch while I processed. She said forgiveness wasn't required, that I didn't owe them anything. They'd have to live with their choices. I'd have to live with mine. The legal cases moved forward slowly. Pastor Raymond fought every charge, using church money to hire expensive defense attorneys. But the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, medical records, testimony from staff who'd turned whistleblower. The Montana facility was shut down permanently. Similar programs in other states were raided and closed. Hundreds of kids were freed from these programs, sent back to families or into protective custody if home wasn't safe. The church splintered as members fought over whether to believe the allegations or stand by the leadership. Some families left in disgust. Others doubled down, claiming this was spiritual warfare. My parents were somewhere in the middle, still attending church but no longer in leadership positions. From what Caitlin heard through former church friends, they'd become pariahs, blamed for bringing attention to the programs by trying to send me there. I finished high school through online courses and got accepted to 3 colleges. I chose one across the country, wanting maximum distance from anything connected to the church. Caitlin helped me move into the dorms, made sure I had everything I needed. She'd been my parent for the past year, more than my actual parents ever had. Before she left, she hugged me and said she was proud of who I'd become, that surviving what we'd survived and still being able to trust people, to build a life, was an act of courage. I started therapy the first week of college. The counselor specialized in religious trauma and helped me untangle years of conditioning. I'd grown up believing questioning authority was sinful, that my thoughts weren't my own but had to align with church teaching. Learning to trust my own judgment, my own moral compass, was harder than any class I took. Pastor Raymond was convicted on 12 counts of child abuse and false imprisonment. He was sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. 3 staff members got lesser sentences in exchange for testimony. The church lost its nonprofit status after the IRS investigation revealed massive financial fraud. Millions had been funneled through the Reformation programs while claiming charitable purposes. The church's assets were frozen. Civil suits from victims' families would tie up the remaining money for years. My parents tried to reach out a few times during my first year of college. Letters mostly, since I'd blocked their numbers. I read the first few. Apologies, explanations, pleas for reconciliation. They'd left the church completely, they said, joined a different congregation that was less extreme. They were in therapy, trying to understand how they'd been manipulated. They wanted a relationship with me, even if it took years to rebuild trust. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. But for now, I needed space to figure out who I was without their influence. Caitlin said that was healthy, that I had to protect myself first. She'd maintained no contact for years, and didn't regret it. Some bridges burned, needed to stay burned. I changed my major to psychology, specifically interested in cult behavior and religious manipulation. My own experiences gave me insight into how intelligent people could be convinced to harm their own children in the name of faith. I wanted to understand it, to help others escape before it was too late. Veronica Tran won a journalism award for her investigation. She'd moved on to exposing other abusive religious organizations, using what she learned from our case. She stayed in touch with Caitlin and occasionally asked me for input on stories. I was grateful someone was continuing the work of holding these groups accountable. 3 years after my escape, I got a call from a blocked number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A young voice, maybe 15, scared. "Is this Daniel? Caitlin's brother?" I confirmed, and the voice continued. "My name is Isaac. I'm at your old church. My parents are planning to send me to a program. I found articles about what happened to you, and I tracked down your sister's contact info. I need help. I need to get out before they take me. My heart rate spiked. This was exactly what Caitlin had feared, that the church would continue despite everything, finding new ways to operate their programs. I got Isaac's information and called Caitlin. She contacted Veronica, and within hours they had a plan. The church had rebranded their Reformation programs, moving them to different states under different names. The abuse was continuing under new leadership. Isaac became our inside source, documenting everything he could. His parents scheduled his departure for the following month. We got him out 2 days before they planned to take him. Caitlin drove to his city and picked him up from school. His parents reported him missing. Police found him within a week staying with Caitlin, but by then he'd turned 18 and could make his own choices. He testified about the church's continued programs and new investigations were launched. This cycle would probably continue forever. New churches, new programs, new vulnerable kids. But each one who escaped, who told their story, made it harder for these organizations to operate in darkness. Isaac stayed with Caitlin while finishing high school, the same way I had. We'd become an unofficial network helping kids escape religious abuse. Others who'd survived similar situations reached out offering resources. It wasn't an organized system, just people who'd been through it trying to help others avoid the same fate. 5 years after that 2 a.m. phone call, I graduated college with a degree in psychology. Caitlin flew in for the ceremony. My parents sent a card that I didn't open. I'd built a life they had no part in, and I was okay with that. The family I'd chosen, Caitlin, Frank the trucker who still checked in occasionally, Veronica, Isaac, the other survivors I'd met through support groups, they were enough. During my graduation speech as class representative, I talked about the courage it takes to question the narratives we're given, to trust ourselves even when authority figures insist we're wrong. I didn't mention the church or my parents specifically, but Caitlin knew who I was talking about. Afterward, she told me Mom and Dad would have been proud if they'd heard it. I said they'd lost the right to be proud when they'd chosen their church over their children. Some damage couldn't be undone, some trust couldn't be rebuilt, but survivors could build new lives from the rubble, could help others escape before the same thing happened to them. That 2 a.m. warning had saved me, and I'd spend the rest of my life making sure other kids got the same chance to run. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.